about Graph Builder. Graph Builder is an application that Cengage developed to accompany our economics textbooks primarily. We haven't seen use of it anywhere else yet, but that's not to say it couldn't possibly happen. The purpose for Graph Builder is to break down complex graphs in the economics discipline into smaller, more digestible pieces so that students can step through the logic of creating a graph step at a time and understand how the components relate to one another and how they work together to build a solution that explains an economic concept. Graph Builder starts as a static graph that would appear in our printed textbooks, and we take selections from those graphs, and the ones that make sense will provide the Graph Builder treatment that includes all of the features you're about to see. An ideal graph is going to be one that demonstrates a concept, a change in an item or in the data that relates to the graph, or is a fairly complex concept that may be difficult to understand and comprehend kind of all in one piece. If it's just a simple graph that demonstrates demand at a given point, for instance, it's not going to be the most amenable to Graph Builder, but working with the folks at Cengage, you can select the graphs that make the most sense for Graph Builder treatment. What I'm showing on the screen right now is the Graph Builder activity inline in the Cengage Learning MindTap product. You'll see that it looks very much like one of the still images. I'm not sure I don't think I have one on this screen, but the static images are going to look very much like what you see right here, except without the slide out menu on the left-hand side. This is what provides the navigation through the Graph Builder activity. You see there are three main buckets. There's the graph. This is the initial graph, the one that appears in the printed text, and the one that appears in the flow of the reader when you're reading through. With seeing the graph built step by step, you can step through. In this particular graph, we have 6 steps that break down the graph and then rebuild it a step at a time. The third big bucket is optional for inclusion in a Graph Builder activity. That's where we create a problem that is very much like the graph that is being presented, but allows the students to take their own, make their own attempt at completing a graph that matches that sort of concept. So as I said, we start with the image as it appears in the flow of the text, and then when you're ready, you step into seeing the graph built step by step. You see that all of the caption is stripped away with the exception of this new sentence that is added. You'll see that the sentence that is added in this case is identical to the initial caption, but that is not necessarily always required. If it's better for a given Graph Builder activity that you build a scenario, you might want to change the text to introduce the scenario and then start down the progression steps. So you can use your creativity there to build a situation that's going to make the most sense. Then moving from step to step, you have a couple of options. You see the buttons across the bottom that allow you to move from one step to the next. There are also arrows on the left, and once you click on the first one, you'll see an arrow on the right. So you can use the arrows to move back and forth between the steps of the graph. You'll see that the initial text in the caption has gone from bold to not bolded, and the new text that we added is now in bold. And this piece of text that gets added is often accompanied, as you see here, by changes in the image. You see in our initial step, the last row of the table was not bold and there was no point on the graph. But when we move to that next step, we see that this is highlighted in bold and it has a corresponding image on the graph. Next step, you see, again, the text is switched from bold to non-bold and new text is added representing the new data that's been added to the graph. Here we have 250 with a demand of 2. That point is plotted on the graph, and you see the little lines indicating where those two intersect. This proceeds all the way through. Here you'll see additional content has been added, and quite a bit more additional information has been drawn on the graph to represent all of these points being plotted on the graph. In the next step, you'll see a couple of things. You'll see we've added some additional text, and we've also added what we call a call-out, which is a little box, if you will, that contains some text that points out something specific on the graph. So normally it wouldn't be a part of the graph, but because we're trying to make this point that we're talking about what happens when demand changes, we highlight that by including this call-out. Similarly, in the final step, we have a call-out for the quantity axis on the graph that shows how these two changes work together to demonstrate the point that we're trying to make with this graph. So in order to communicate this information to Cengage through the content development and production process, we have a couple of tools that we make available. The first is authoring guidelines. These are the Graph Builder content creation guidelines. This is a document that lays out how we want SMEs such as yourselves to create the content. We provide an overview of the product and considerations for creation, when to include questions, which graphs are going to be more ideal. This is something that we have general rules here in the guidelines, but you're always welcome to reach out to your contacts at Cengage to get more specific information. You'll see we also talk about file naming. It's very helpful for us. In fact, it's getting to the point where it's mandatory that we enforce file naming so that we're exactly certain what we get and that it's all in the format that we need it and it's all named and numbered appropriately, so there's no confusion on our end when we receive submissions from the content creators. We're exactly certain of what we get. So we provide file naming guidelines for you, and we would like you very much to adhere to those. So next we talk about the layering script. There's the big section at the top, which I believe Dawn included a video to allow you to understand what goes in there and how that section gets completed. Here's a blank template that has all of that information left blank. And then here is the script with the information filled in for this particular template. So to start with, the materials that you'll be provided are the guidelines that I just showed, the blank template that I just showed, this one here, and then the PDFs of the book for which you will be providing Graph Builder activities. So this is the printed PDF for an economics title, and here you see a graph for which we have decided that we're going to create a Graph Builder activity. In order to start, you start by pasting a copy from the final PDF into the template after you complete all of this initial information, which I won't go over. The way you do that is pretty much up to you. I have a tool on my computer called Snipping Tool, very creatively named, that allows me to select a section of the text, copy it, and then paste it into my template. So here I have all of the material that I'm going to start with. The next thing we need to do is to break the activity down into its individual component steps. And the way we do that is you'll see that there in the table there are columns of information that need to be filled out. Here's the blank template. So we have the layer, which means the instance of the image that you're referring to, The caption text, this is going to be the text that we want to add to the complete caption, so not the entire caption, but just the text that you want to add. Any instructions for modifying the graph, and then any callouts that need to be included. So here we have the Graph Builder image on one side, or activity on one side, and the blank template on the other. So you can see the images look the same. In the first row, we talk about, here's the text that we want on that initial caption. So that relates to this right here. We want the completed table to show, so the entire table is included on this initial image. And we want to draw and label both axes, so we have the x-axis and the y-axis, and we have the labels for all of the data points along the axis, and then the labels for each of the axes. Those are all included. In the next step, step 2, we're going to add this text. And you see that represents itself by the new text that's being added in bold. You don't need to worry about the bold and non-bold parts. That happens automatically through the application. And here we've instructed the vendor to bold the bottom row of the table. You see that here. And to place a point at the coordinates that represent this point from the table. So the dot is included here. This proceeds through the various steps. So each step has the text that's to be included, the changes that are to be made to the graph, and any callouts that might be necessary. Down here in step 5, you see I talked about the callout that goes out here. Where that gets represented in the template is in this last column. So that's how you would specify that, and you would indicate this could be improved by including a statement here saying to place the callout along with the black arrow. So that's how the callouts get included as well. And you proceed through as many steps as necessary to complete a Graph Builder activity. Currently, we know that Graph Builder will work effectively with as many as 7 steps. 6 or 7 is about the maximum that we would ever want to include. If you find that you have a graph that requires more than 7 steps, please talk to your contact at Cengage, and we can discuss with you whether or not we can extend, which we would have to do a bit of work to confirm that, and we may be able to help you refine how you're thinking about the build to minimize the number of steps required. But we want as many as we need and not too many. So we're willing to work with you on that score if we need to. So the next section that we want to talk about is the build question. That occurs here through this button at the bottom. And you see that the entire image is removed and a blank drawing area is presented for the student. The question appears at the top of the screen, and instructions for what the students are required to do appear below that. You see for this particular Graph Builder activity, we do have a table that's included as well. That's possible. You can include an initial graph if that's appropriate for your question, or a table like this that presents data that students would use in completing their Graph Builder activity. So here's an example of a completed template. You'll see much the same information on the left-hand side of the screen as is on the right-hand side of the screen. We have the question at the top. We have the table. This particular table was recreated into the style of the tables that are used throughout this particular product, and expect that as you move along. That the instructions, I should have said this when talking about the build script. All of the instructions that you provide will be sent to our production house, who's responsible for the printed text, and they'll create images for each one of the steps in your Graph Builder activity, and they'll do it in the style of the graphs that accompany the textbook, so that there's a nice uniform presentation throughout the Graph Builder activities. Same will be true here. This table is created in the style of tables that are used in the product. So here's the question in the completed template. The blank template is much like that, except it's missing all of the data, of course. Similarly, you fill out all the information at the top. You would number your graph question. You would include the question and an answer, and the answer is always going to be in the form of an image. You see in the completed template here. This looks very much like the Graph Builder workspace. This is what has been used to create the solution. So the responsibilities of the content creator are to create the question and then mock up a solution image by using the Graph Builder activity itself. So your Cengage contact will provide you, if you don't already have access to a product that includes Graph Builder, they'll provide you with that access, and then you can go in and use the Graph Builder application to complete the solution image. So I'm going to work without a net here and draw for you. So here's my starting X and Y axes. You see that it's a demand schedule, so it's very much like the question. We have the price on the Y-axis and quantity on the left axis. Graph Builder has a labeling tool that we can use for that. So you choose the tool, click on the workspace, and a text box is entered. So I'll label my Y-axis. Whoops, I need to switch this to horizontal, and my left axis. And we have our data points, so we know we need $1, $1.50, $2, and $2.50. So I'll go ahead and make those hash marks. Pencil can be used for that. You can switch color if you need to on any tool by using the color palette here. I'm going to stick with black for all of this stuff right now. 1, 150, 2, 250. And I'll label each one of these. I'm not going to go to the trouble of labeling them all, but I'll do a couple. And quantity demanded, I have 1, 3, 5, and 7. So I'll make those marks, switch to my pencil tool again. Etc. And then we're drawing a demand curve. We have our points. We would next plot the data points. So we have 250 with a quantity of 1. And we have this point tool that you can use for that. I'm going to go ahead and stick with black. 250 quantity demanded is 1. $2 quantity demanded is 3. 1, 2, 3. 150 quantity demanded is 5, and $1 quantity demanded is 7. Just to make things a little bit more clear, I'm going to switch to a different color and draw the line connecting those dots to show the demand curve. And if it's appropriate, I'm going to demonstrate this. The question says, what if it falls by $1? What's the change in the quantity demanded? I might want to show that by using my pencil tool, switching back to black, and indicating that at 250, quantity demanded was 1, and at 150, quantity demanded was 5. So here is my completed graph. Oh, I need to label the curve, I'm sure. So I'm fairly close to done here, I think. What I'll want to do is, in order to create the right image to include in your template, is show the correct graph. And you see, this has already been done for me, and I did a pretty good job of replicating what is required here. The left-hand side is my image. The right-hand side is the correct image. Your graph, if you're going into some generic product that has Graph Builder, may look nothing like the graph that you drew, and that's entirely appropriate. All you care about is the one on the left-hand side of the screen. You can save it by right-clicking on a PC. I don't know how that represents itself on a Mac, and then choose Save Image As. You're given a dialog box where you can name the image And according to our instructions, we say author name, edition, chapter, image, and because this is a solution, we're going to call it, name it with an S, and then include an A, indicating that it's the A series in our solution image. And you see here that my only option, given the program that I'm using, is to save this as a portable network graphics, I believe is what PNG stands for. Don't worry about changing the kind of image. Just take whatever your program provides for you in terms of saving. If we need to convert it, we'll do that on the Cengage side. So I'll save the image. I can navigate to that folder. And I have that open in a separate window here. So here's my image. I'm going to select all, copy, and then go over to my blank template. And paste the image in. It's pretty much up to you what the construct of the question that you create. It'll be whatever is appropriate for the graph that you're including, and you can certainly work with the Cengage people if you'd like some guidance in creating questions that are effective and appropriate. The next and final step for Graph Builder is to create an explanation graph. You see here what we've done is taken the solution graph and then provided some additional text in call-out boxes with arrows if necessary to point to the right chunk of the graph. So we'll need you to create those as well. And I can show you an example in our completed template. We've used, in this case, we've used words feature to draw some text boxes on the screen to approximate where we would want the text to appear, and used words feature for adding arrows to add arrows if necessary to indicate exactly what a particular chunk of text width is associated with. And then we include the text itself at the bottom of the screen as you see down here. So EX1 is the text that would be filled in this box. EX2 would be filled in this box. EX3 in this box. And then that would be sent to the folks within Cengage. We'll work with our external vendors to create the solution image that has the gray background, has the right coloring on the boxes, has all of the fonts that Cengage specifies. We do all of that work with our production vendors, so you don't have to worry about the perfection of anything other than the solution image that you provide. We handle the rest of the configuration that we need to do to create our solution and explanation images. That's really all there is to Graph Builder. As I said, when you start a project, you'll get the guidelines, you'll get the blank templates, you'll get the completed templates, so you can see what one of these things looks like when it's finished. You'll be provided with access to a product that contains Graph Builder, so you can work with Graph Builder and see how it behaves, and you can also use it to create your solution images.